Ever stumbled upon a war film so powerful you wonder how the world forgot it existed? The 80s gave us blockbusters like Platoon and Full Metal Jacket, sure, but hidden behind them were stories just as fierce, just as unforgettable, buried under bigger budgets and louder explosions. Some vanished after a single screening, others were banned, ignored, or too real for their time. Yet decades later, they still demand to be seen. Ready to uncover the ones that slipped through history's cracks? Number 15. The Beast, 1988. Few war films dare to tell the story from the other side, but The Beast does exactly that, and does it brilliantly. Set during the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, it follows a Soviet tank crew stranded behind enemy lines after a chaotic ambush. The desert becomes their prison, and their tank, their only protection, slowly turns into a coffin of guilt, pride, and survival. What makes The Beast unforgettable is its perspective. Instead of American soldiers, we see the Soviet ones confused, loyal, and questioning their purpose in a land they barely understand. The conflict between the brutal commander Daskal and the morally torn soldier Kovchenko powers the story. Their battle isn't just against enemies outside, it's against their own fading humanity. Directed by Kevin Reynolds, who later gave us Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. This film is packed with realism. Shot in Israel using real tanks and locals, it feels dangerously authentic. The tension is suffocating, the silence of the desert almost deafening. Critics called it Das Boot in the Desert, but American audiences barely saw it. Why? Because during the Cold War, humanizing Soviet soldiers wasn't exactly box office gold. Over time, The Beast found a small but loyal following among film lovers who appreciated its courage and moral complexity. It's not about victory, it's about survival and conscience in a place where both are impossible. Gritty, haunting, and strangely poetic. This forgotten gem proves that even in war, humanity refuses to vanish completely. Number 14. Come and See, 1985. There are movies you watch, and there are movies that stay with you forever. Come and See belongs to the second kind. Directed by Ilham Klimov. This Soviet masterpiece doesn't just show war, it makes you feel trapped inside it. The story follows Florya, a boy in Nazi-occupied Belarus, who joins partisans expecting adventure, but finds only horror. What begins as youthful excitement turns into pure nightmare. This film isn't about explosions or strategy. It's about the death of innocence. Real bullets were reportedly used in some scenes, and young actor Alexei Kravchenko endured such emotional strain that he needed hypnosis between takes. The camera doesn't flinch, it stares. Long, trembling shots show faces trembling with disbelief, the air thick with grief. The cinematography is a fever dream, handheld, dizzying, and painfully intimate. You can almost feel the dirt, the smoke, the ringing silence after each moment of terror. There's no music guiding your emotions, just whispers, static, and the raw noise of destruction. When Come and See was released, many theaters refused to show it. It was called too disturbing, too real. For years, it was nearly impossible to find outside of Eastern Europe. But those who did see it called it one of the greatest anti-war films ever made. Directors from Spielberg to Del Toro have cited it as an influence. It's not entertainment, it's a warning. Watching it once is enough to change how you see every other war movie. You don't forget Come and See. You survive it. Number 13. Empire of the Sun, 1987. Before Christian Bale became Batman, he delivered one of the most astonishing performances of the 80s in a Spielberg film that barely anyone saw when it came out. Empire of the Sun tells the story of Jim, a young British boy living in Shanghai when World War II explodes around him. Separated from his parents and thrown into an internment camp, he must grow up fast or not at all. What sets this film apart is its quiet heartbreak. Spielberg, known for spectacle, takes a step back here. The battles happen far away. What matters is how they echo in a child's mind. Bale's performance is almost unreal in its depth. At just 13, he moves from bright-eyed wonder to hollow-eyed survivor without missing a beat. Shot across Spain and China, the production recreated vast abandoned cities, rusting aircraft, and endless camps. John Williams' score is more restrained than usual, melancholic, almost dreamlike, mirroring Jim's struggle to keep his imagination alive amid ruin. Audiences in the 80s didn't know what to make of it. Too serious for family audiences, too emotional for action fans, it slipped through the cracks between The Color Purple and Indiana Jones. But time has been kind. Today it's hailed as one of Spielberg's most personal and mature works. It's not a war epic, it's a memory, a child's vision of chaos, beauty, and survival. If you want to see the moment a legendary actor was born and a director took a creative risk that few appreciated, at the time, Empire of the Sun deserves your rediscovery. Number 12, Hamburger Hill, 1987. If Platoon showed the moral chaos of Vietnam and Full Metal Jacket, showed the psychological Hamburger Hill, showed the physical agony, and that's why it still hits so hard. Based on a real assault on Hill 937, it's the story of young soldiers fighting for a muddy patch of land that ultimately meant nothing. 10 assaults, endless rain, zero glory. The film doesn't glamorize anything. It's muddy, messy, and emotionally draining. Director John Irvin keeps the camera low and close, forcing you to feel every crawl, every fall, every hopeless command. The cast trained in boot camps before filming, and it shows every movement feels heavy and real. The script, written by a Vietnam veteran, pulls no punches. The soldiers aren't grand heroes, they're tired, scared, and just trying to stay alive. There's no big speech about honor, just small acts of courage that get lost in the noise of gunfire and exhaustion. Released just weeks after Full Metal Jacket, it never had a chance to shine. Audiences were already overloaded with war films, and Hamburger Hill vanished into the background. But veterans who saw it recognized something rare: authenticity. Over the years, it's earned respect as one of the most honest depictions of combat from that era. It's not about victory, it's about endurance. Watching it today feels like uncovering a raw nerve the world tried to forget. Number 11. When the Wind Blows, 1986. Now, imagine a war movie with no soldiers, no armies, and no battles, just an elderly couple trying to survive the unimaginable. That's When the Wind Blows. A British animated masterpiece that hits harder than most live-action dramas. Jim and Hilda Bloggs are an ordinary couple in the countryside, living through the unthinkable. A nuclear strike. They follow cheerful government pamphlets, make tea, and try to stay calm as the world quietly fades outside their windows. The animation, hand-drawn and stop-motion combined, looks charming until it doesn't. The tone shifts slowly. The colors drain. Their cheerful conversations become heartbreaking whispers. What begins as quaint British humor turns into silence and decay. You don't see the explosion. You just feel it through the couple's fading hope. The soundtrack is haunting. David Bowie wrote the title song, while Roger Waters of Pink Floyd created the score, wrapping each scene in eerie melancholy. The film was released during the height of Cold War anxiety, right after Threads and the day after. Yet it was too intimate to make headlines. Critics didn't know what to call it: cartoon tragedy or cautionary tale. Over time, it found a cult following among those who appreciate emotional storytelling without spectacle. When the Wind Blows doesn't shock, it whispers. And somehow, that makes it even more devastating. It reminds us that real courage isn't always on the battlefield. It's in the quiet moments when people cling to hope against all reason. Number 10. The Winter War, 1989. If you think you've seen gritty, cold, or hopeless war movies, The Winter War will make you think again. This Finnish epic throws you straight into the blizzards of 1939, where an outnumbered Finnish army faces the Soviet invasion with little more than determination, ski boots, and frostbitten courage. It's not about glory, it's about survival, in temperatures that could freeze a man solid before a bullet ever reached him. What makes this film unforgettable is its realism. Director Pekka Parikka didn't glamorize anything. He used real locations, real snow, and even real military gear from the era. Many of the extras were Finnish conscripts who actually trained in the same conditions as the soldiers they portrayed. The result? You can almost feel the sting of the wind, the crunch of snow under boots, and the weight of hopelessness pressing down. The story follows a group of ordinary men, farmers, brothers, neighbors, pulled from peaceful lives and thrown into a war they didn't ask for. There are no heroes here, just frozen faces, quiet prayers, and moments of grim humor that keep them from falling apart. It's brutal, beautiful, and painfully human. When the Winter War premiered in Finland, it became a national event. But outside Scandinavia, it barely made a ripple. For decades, it existed only on poor quality VHS tapes before finally being restored in the high definition. Now, anyone can witness one of the most authentic portrayals of endurance ever filmed. There's no Hollywood gloss here, no big speeches, just a battle against the elements, against exhaustion, against despair. The Winter War doesn't just show you war, it traps you inside it. And when the screen finally fades to white, you'll feel the chill long after. Number 9. The Big Red One. The Reconstruction, 1980. Sometimes a great film just needs time to be seen for what it truly is. The Big Red One was originally released in a heavily cut version that left audiences confused and critics unimpressed. But when the full version, The Reconstruction, was finally restored in the early 2000s, it revealed the masterpiece director Samuel Fuller had always intended. Fuller wasn't just any filmmaker. He was a real World War II veteran who served with the 1st Infantry Division, the legendary Big Red One. His film is part memoir, part nightmare, and part love letter to the men who survived it. Lee Marvin stars as a hardened sergeant leading a group of young soldiers through North Africa, Sicily, and finally into Nazi-occupied Europe. Mark Hamill, fresh off Star Wars, delivers a raw emotional performance as one of the haunted young men under Marvin's command. The tone is stripped-down human and shockingly intimate. There's humor, tenderness, and moments of eerie calm that make the horrors hit harder. One of the most haunting sequences comes near the end, when the soldiers stumble upon a concentration camp. Fuller doesn't use music or speeches, just silence and disbelief. The original studio release cut almost an hour of footage gutting the heart of the story. But the reconstruction changed everything. Critics suddenly hailed it as one of the great lost war films, and Roger Ebert called it one of the best war movies ever made. It's not about winning battles. It's about staying alive long enough to understand what you've lost. The Big Red One is a soldier's diary written in dirt, sweat, and memory, and it stands today as a rediscovered classic that finally got the respect it deserved. Number 8. Farewell to the King, 1989. What happens when a soldier walks away from war and finds peace only for the world to come looking for him again? That's the haunting question. At the center of Farewell to the King, one of the most visually stunning and emotionally layered war films of the 80s. Nick Nolte stars as Leroyd, an American deserter, who vanishes into the jungles of Borneo during World War II. Everyone assumes he's dead until the Allies discover he's alive and ruling a native tribe that worships him as a leader. When they ask for his help against the Japanese, Leroyd faces a choice: return to the violence he escaped or protect the fragile paradise he's built. Directed by John Milius, who co-wrote Apocalypse Now, the film feels like a dream and a warning. It's part war movie, part spiritual journey, and part rebellion against the very idea of civilization. Nolte gives one of his finest performances, raw, intense, and unpredictable. His Leroyd is a man torn between loyalty and freedom, haunted by what war made him, and terrified of what it might turn him into. Again. Shot on location in Malaysia, the film looks breathtaking. Lush jungles, misty rivers, and tribal rituals blend with the sense that nature itself is watching the folly of mankind. Critics didn't know what to do with it. It wasn't a typical war story, and it vanished almost immediately after release. Yet over time, Farewell to the King has gained a quiet cult, following among those who crave something deeper than battles and explosions. It's about one man's desperate attempt to stay human in a world that keeps demanding blood. A war film without a hero, or maybe the only kind that deserves one. Number 7. The Dogs of War, 1980. If you've ever wondered what happens when soldiers fight not for country, but for profit, The Dogs of War has the answer, and it's not pretty. This tough, tightly wound thriller stars Christopher Walken as Jamie Shannon, a professional mercenary hired to overthrow the dictator of a small African nation. But what starts as a paid job soon becomes something more dangerous, a mission that tests every belief he has left. The movie begins like a spy film. Walken's character moves through cities and airports posing as a photojournalist while secretly scouting defenses. The tension builds quietly like a fuse slowly burning. By the time the real fighting begins, the audience is already exhausted just like him. Walken gives one of the most grounded performances of his career. Gone is the eccentric swagger we usually associate with him. Here he's quiet, calculating, and deeply human, a man who's seen too much and trusts no one. Director John Irvin, who also made Hamburger Hill, keeps things stripped to the bone. Every scene feels authentic, from the whispered planning sessions to the chaos of the final assault. The story, based on Frederick Forsyth's novel, was inspired by real post-colonial conflicts and political coups of the 70s. It's not glamorous, and that's exactly the point. There are no winners here, just survivors. At the time, The Dogs of War was controversial. It was banned in several countries and are criticized for being too cynical. But today, that same honesty feels refreshing. It's a film that stares straight into the business side of battle and dares to say what few others would. Sometimes the true motive isn't patriotism, it's profit. Number 6, Threads, 1984. Some war films shake you. Threads shatters you and then quietly leaves you to process the wreckage. Produced by the BBC, this British television film aired only once in prime time before viewers complained it was too disturbing to ever show again. And they weren't exaggerating. The story begins in the city of Sheffield, with ordinary people living their everyday lives, working, falling in love, raising families. On the radio, political tensions rise between global powers, but life goes on until the sirens start. What follows isn't cinematic chaos, it's silence, confusion, and the slow collapse of everything familiar. Director Mick Jackson made the film with chilling realism. There are no melodramatic moments, no big speeches. Instead, he shows what happens in the weeks, months, and even years after a nuclear attack. Food runs out, communication breaks down, and society unravels into something unrecognizable. The horror of Threads isn't loud, it's quiet. The static of a broken radio, the look of ash falling from the sky, the emptiness where a city used to be. Every scene feels like a documentary, and that's what makes it terrifying. When it aired in 1984, people were stunned. Teachers used it in classrooms, psychologists warned against screening it for children, and many called it the most realistic portrayal of global collapse ever filmed. Unlike most war movies, Threads doesn't end with hope. It ends with a whisper, a reminder that humanity's greatest danger isn't the enemy across the border, but our own blindness to consequence. It's not a film you enjoy, but one you never forget. Threads doesn't entertain, it warns. And in a strange, powerful way, that's what makes it unforgettable. Number 5. Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, 1983. Some films are battles of armies. Merry Christmas. Mr. Lawrence is a battle of souls, set in a Japanese prison camp during World War II. It's less about violence and more about the collision of cultures, beliefs, and pride. Directed by Nagisa Oshima, it stars David Bowie. Yes, David Bowie as a captured British officer alongside Japanese rock legend Ryuichi Sakamoto, who also composed its haunting score. From the moment it begins, you realize this isn't a typical war film. The jungle isn't just scenery, it's a pressure cooker. Every look, every silence, every tiny gesture carries tension. Bowie's character, Jack Eliers, is mysterious, defiant, and deeply human, a man struggling to retain dignity in a place designed to erase it. Opposite him is Captain Yonoi, played by Sakamoto, who views honor and duty through the lens of absolute control. The film explores the strange respect and quiet obsession that forms between captor and captive. Beneath the rigid order of war lies something even more complex: understanding. Tom Conti's performance as the titular Mr. Lawrence grounds the story, with empathy serving as the moral bridge between two worlds that can't fully meet. Oshima doesn't rely on spectacle. He uses silence. The result is hypnotic. Sakamoto's ethereal score drifts through the film like memory itself, sad, beautiful, and unshakable. Critics were divided in the 80s. Some found it too slow, too strange, too emotional. But over the years, Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence has been rediscovered as one of the most moving war dramas ever made, a meditation on shame, forgiveness, and what it means to stay human when everything human is stripped away. It's not a film you watch for action. It's one you absorb. Bowie called it one of the most demanding performances of his life, and it shows. Quietly devastating, endlessly poetic. It's the kind of story that lingers long after the final note fades. Number 4. Attack Force. Z, 1981. Before Mel Gibson led Gallipoli and before Sam Neill hunted submarines, Both starred together in one of the most underrated action dramas of the decade, Attack Force Z. Loosely based on real-life commando missions during World War II, it follows an elite Australian-New Zealand unit tasked with rescuing survivors of a plane crash on a Japanese-occupied island. It sounds like a simple rescue mission, but what unfolds is far from straightforward. Jungle heat betrayal and moral conflict twist the mission into something far more personal. Director Tim Burstall delivers tight pacing and sharp tension, but what elevates the film is its emotional undercurrent. Beneath the adventure lies a question. How far should you go for duty when the line between right and wrong blurs into mud and rain? The film's authenticity comes from its low-budget intensity. Shot on location in Taiwan, the production was anything but glamorous. The crew battled weather mosquitoes and unpredictable terrain, giving the movie a raw, sweaty realism you can almost smell through the screen. Gibson and Neal, still early in their careers, bring real gravity to their roles, especially in the quieter moments when the mission's cost becomes clear. While the film was dismissed as just another jungle adventure upon release, it's now seen as a gripping slice of Australian cinema that dared to show the complexities of colonial war from a regional lens. There are no grand speeches or Hollywood gloss, here just exhausted men trying to do something good in a place that doesn't care. Fast-focused and full of unexpected depth, Attack Force Z proves you don't need a massive budget to tell a story that hits hard. Sometimes all it takes is sweat conscience and a will to survive. Number 3. To End All Wars, 1980. Before The Bridge on the River Kwai, and long before Unbroken, there was To End All Wars, a quietly powerful drama based on real experiences in a Balayars Japanese prisoner camp. The film stars a young Robert Carlyle and Kiefer Sutherland as Allied soldiers captured during World War II and forced to build a railway through dense jungle. But what starts as a story of survival becomes a study in redemption and forgiveness. Unlike most war films that focus on escape or rebellion, this one turns inward. The battle here isn't against the captors, it's within the prisoners themselves. Pride, rage, and despair clash with humanity, faith, and forgiveness. Director David Cunningham crafts a film that's haunting without ever resorting to sentimentality. The visuals are uncomfortably authentic. The heat, the sickness, the exhaustion, it's all there. But what makes it unforgettable is the transformation of its characters. Carlyle's performance as the fiery soldier haunted by guilt is remarkable, and Sutherland brings a quiet philosophical edge that keeps the film balanced. While To End All Wars received little attention upon release, it has gained a lasting audience thanks to its emotional honesty. It's not about battles, it's about belief. What do people hold on to when the world collapses around them? Shot in Thailand under brutal conditions, the movie's realism comes from pain, both on and off screen. Critics praised its human core, but admitted it was too serious for mainstream audiences at the time. Today, that same seriousness is its strength. To End All Wars doesn't preach or glorify, it reflects. It shows that sometimes the bravest act isn't fighting back, it's forgiving. And that message, even wrapped in mud and misery, still resonates decades later. Number 2. The Killing Fields, 1984. You can't talk about forgotten 80s war films without mentioning The Killing Fields, a masterpiece that somehow slipped off the mainstream radar despite winning Oscars and leaving audiences speechless. Directed by Roland Joffé, it tells the real-life story of journalist Sidney Schanberg and his Cambodian friend Dith Pran as the Khmer Rouge takes over Cambodia. What makes this film extraordinary is its perspective. It's not about soldiers, it's about reporters, ordinary men caught in the tide of history, armed only with cameras and courage. When the regime rises, Dith Pran is captured, and what follows is a harrowing journey through a landscape of silence, fear, and survival. Haing S. Ngor, a real-life survivor of the Cambodian genocide, plays Dith Pran. His performance is beyond acting, it's lived experience. He won an Academy Award for it, but more importantly, he gave voice to millions who couldn't speak for themselves. The film's depiction of lost loyalty and resilience is heartbreaking, but deeply human. Cinematographer Chris Menges paints Cambodia with both beauty and horror, lush green fields hiding unthinkable tragedy. Mike Oldfield's haunting score adds emotional weight without a single wasted note. Despite critical acclaim, The Killing Fields never became a household name. Perhaps It was too real, too painful. But for those who have seen it, it stands as one of the greatest war dramas ever made a story, not of armies, but of friendship morality and the cost of truth. Every decade has films that define its conscience. For the 80s, this was one of them. The Killing Fields reminds us that even when humanity collapses, compassion can still survive the wreckage. Number 1. No Man's Land, 1987. Before the 90s brought sleek action thrillers and polished heroics, the 80s delivered No Man's Land, a war film that few remember, but none forget once they've seen it. Set along a desolate border during the final years of the Cold War, it's less about armies and more about the eerie silence between them. The story follows a group of soldiers trapped in an abandoned valley that separates two warring sides. There's no clear enemy, just fear exhaustion, and the slow realization that they're fighting ghosts of ideology rather than people. As days stretch into weeks, paranoia takes over. Who's the aggressor? Who's right? Does it even matter anymore? Director Alan Tanner turns what could have been a simple conflict story into a haunting meditation on isolation. The landscapes are barren, windswept, and endless, like a graveyard waiting for names. Every frame feels heavy, with unspoken tension. The soldiers begin questioning not only their mission, but their very purpose, trapped in a no man's land, both literal and moral. The film's muted tone and slow pacing doomed it at the box office, where audiences crave spectacle over silence. But those same qualities now make it mesmerizing. There are no heroes, no triumphant music, just the sound of wind and regret. Over time, No Man's Land has earned respect among cinephiles who crave the psychological side of war. It's a story of futility, identity, and the invisible lines humans draw and die defending. In a decade obsessed with explosions and glory, this film whispered something far more powerful, that sometimes the deadliest battlefield is the space between us. So, there you have it, 15 war films from the 80s that Hollywood forgot, but history couldn't bury. Some were too strange, too real, or too honest for their time, but every one of them still hits with the force of truth. Which one surprised you most? Drop your pick in the comments, hit subscribe, and share this list with someone who loves hidden gems. Because sometimes the best battles in cinema are the ones we almost lost.